Welcome back to The New House, Old Soul. I don't think we can get very far into this conversation without talking about craftsmanship.
Series, hosted by Brent Hull. New House, Old Soul. Sponsored by Stellar Floors and the Unico System.
I believe that craftsmanship in the past, craftsmen in the past, had more skill, okay? They had more abilities than craftsmen today. Now, why is that? Well, they had to work with natural products, natural materials. There was no snap in place, siding details. Everything was made to go into a specific location. Remember, I've got my biases, guys. This is where I started. When I went to the North Bennett Street School, the first thing they told us to do was get old hand planes and get them working again. Well, this was the plane I picked. It's a Stanley number 5. So my bias is, and the way they taught us is they said, look, if you can build something from 200 years ago, you can build anything today. And so having this understanding of hand tools and how they fit and understanding the precision and beauty that can come from a tool like this always sets me back and establishes my bias that there are better ways to build than we're building today. I just think the opportunity for us is just too awesome. North Bennett Street, we toured it last fall. When I went there, it's called an education in craftsmanship, right? They've got the violin making, they've got traditional furniture making, they've got book binding, right? It's kind of these old world crafts that they're training people to use again today. So North Bennett Street's an amazing place. There's another wonderful school. I'm on the advisory board of the American College of Building Arts in South Carolina. That is an amazing place where it's a college and they're accredited, and so there are people going there to learn plaster and woodworking and ironwork and there's different things going on. So when these schools develop, right, we're teaching skills that a lot of people no longer have and a lot of people no longer practice. And so our craft has been diminished. Look at this too, guys. One of the things I've learned from looking at the past is the information that used to be shared. This is Beatty Langley. What he's doing when he's drawing out this ionic order, right? Look at all the numbers and detail in here, because you'll know that looking at the past, if you studied any of my classical videos, that all of these things, this whole system was a proportioning system. And so proportions were very important to those people living in the past. You can't find a mantle catalog today that would have details like this, okay? And what's this showing? Not only is it showing the design, but it's showing the proportions of all the parts and pieces and dividing out this whole thing by a certain number in the room. And then, what the moldings and what the details look like and what their proportion to one another is. There was a care and a focus on proportion, and craft was a big part of that. So the way we build with fine craft is different than the way things are being built today. And you'll hear me talk about it on this series over and over again. You got to rage against the machine, fight against the man, right? That there is a system of building out there that they're trying to drive you down this lane, that you have to do it this way. It's faster, it's cheaper. If we really want to build at this level, then we need to be able to practice fine craftsmanship in order to raise the bar that's currently out there. But let's go into the showroom. I want to show you some moldings there. So one of the reasons we build these mock-ups is so that the client can look at and figure out what's going on here. You're going to see in that great Italian house that we're working on, there is a terrible crown, okay, in the master that we're going to take out. And it's basically this, okay, built up with foam. And look at the difference between getting a 1 foot section of that of foam versus the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 moldings that it takes to build this up. It isn't cheap. cheap, right? It isn't faster, but I would argue that this is better than, the foam examples that you see that cheapen a house. If you look at, the way we look at moldings, the way we look to elevate things is a finer skill, right? It takes more craft to build things up like this. It takes more skill and understanding to understand the proportion of these moldings and how they correspond to one another, to know what a pulvinated frieze is. Look guys, you can't buy a pulvinated frieze off the shelf anywhere. You're gonna have to make it. We're gonna need to have craft. And so being able to put these together for your clients is a skill set that raises the bar. If you want to have a new house with an old soul, you need to have fine craft. You need to understand how they put moldings together in the past, and then you need to be able to match it, right? Raise your bar with the craft in order to get that old soul. Speaking of craftsmanship, let's go look at Vossel. So in case you don't know, Vossel has been with me now for over 2 years. We met probably 10 or 15 years ago through Facebook. I went over and saw his work in Kiev. He is a master craftsman who's been doing this for 30 years, right? And you can look at the quality and the things he's done and many of the beautiful things we've been able to do because Vossel has raised our bar and raised our ability and skill level so that we can do better things, do more things, do things with a higher level of craftsmanship. Vossel's out here working on this incredible plaques, okay? Now this is a job from New York. The client called us and said, hey, can you carve these things, okay? And what they were doing was they were looking at the difference between the hand carved and a CNC carved. The architect sent us this plan that showed all these color layers. And I was like, what are all the color layers? He goes, well, that's how deep I want these different things so that we get the right depth. Now, she was just inventing and creating, right, the best way to do it. But the modern method of building these plaques, which matched something that's on the lower part of their New York apartment, was going to be set up on a machine, and the machine was going to, carve all this out with a CNC router. Instead, I was like, look, I don't need all those layers. I don't need you to try to figure that out because Vossel, as an artist, as a craftsman, is going to be able to use his eye to understand how deep this scroll is, how to make that dragon head work properly, how to create this face, right? Because unless Vossel's doing it, you'd almost need a master craftsman or an artist to do the CNC thing. The way those things are set up today, guys, is they're oftentimes just scanning it, right? And then the scanner sends it to the CNC and the CNC just routes it out. The problem with that is that, for something that doesn't exist like this, creating something that's lifelike, that is so rich and beautiful, requires a craftsman's hand. Remember, Vossel also carved that Capitol at the Kell House, right? The Kell House is that, turn of the century house up in Wichita Falls that we did a restoration on the exterior from. They had these big massive columns on the front and then a porch that ran around the side. Each of the columns on that porch had this ionic capital up there that was very unique and very different, required us to replicate it. As what's happened with historic capitals that were available around the turn of the century, they were made from molds, right? They were made in a plaster stucco kind of arrangement. Well, that's what Vossel essentially did there. We were able to match the past. How? By having our craftsmen carve that out. We didn't have a good enough capital on that Kell House to get a good clean mold, and so we had to have one carved. That is a skill level that raises your bar, right? So the difference between the way this would be built today on a CNC machine has a difficult time getting in and cutting in underneath and cutting these shadow lines and these details that make it richer and make it come to life. Hand carving isn't something that's on every job. So let's run out to the shop. Let's look at the way we're building some of our doors and windows and talk about, that craftsmanship is also building it in the best way so that it lasts a long time. Okay, so welcome out to the shop, right? This is about 25,000 feet out here. where we custom mill and custom make historic millwork. We are looking to the past, and in copying the past, okay, with our 100-year window and the courthouse and the other things that we're doing, we're looking to the past for inspiration. So we're in the rough mill now. It starts with wood and wood quality. How do we build our 100-year window? We have to use good wood in order to make the windows last that long. So all of our wood comes in rough. We're not Home Depot where you're going picking a 1x5 off the shelf. We're making our 1x5s, right? So we're ordering quarter sawn lumber. This is quarter sawn oak. Or we're taking historic lumber like this, longleaf pine, and using it. So we are salvaging this wood, we're denailing it, we're resawing it, all to get it back. Okay, so we're in the finish mill, right? This is where we assemble things, where we make things. Guys are building on their benches here, and we'll go look at some of that. But remember, when this is a production cabinet shop, there was nothing in here. It was a big open warehouse. There was a CNC machine here, a bunch of sheet goods right here, and they cut parts out from the CNC, laid them on the floor, and they were assembled on the floor, okay? Now, I tell you all that because look at how we're building versus the way new things are built today. In order to get really hand quality, hand-built things, we feel like it has to be happening on a bench, and there's a higher level of craftsmanship here because it's harder to do what we're doing. It takes more skill, takes more experience, takes more time. Here's an example of kind of, the custom things we're doing. Jimmy's building a door right here, and we're paneling it out in the English tradition, okay? There's an English style that has a molding that sits down onto a bevel. It's called a mason's miter, and Jimmy's making that here, where we have to make this cut inside that piece of wood so it lays over top of this in a beautiful way, right? What about that? Well, it takes longer, right? It's more work, but it's more beautiful, and it's gonna last a very long time. So, right, you can get it quick and fast, but you spend a little bit more time, you've got something that lasts 100 years. One of the other areas where it takes a little bit more skill to figure these things out is with these restoration projects. Now, this is a courthouse. This is the Mason County Courthouse, and there's a bunch of courtroom furniture, okay? So this is early 1900s courtroom furniture, and learning to build like this requires a number of different skills. One, the right wood quality, understanding that this is all quarter sawn and rift sawn oak, right? And so we need to make sure we find that when we replace these panels, the brackets, the way these moldings are. When you have to make moldings, right? We've done videos on our molders, but we're cutting custom knives all the time in order to match the past. We think those shapes and profiles are really beautiful and the best ones to copy. So you're essentially building furniture. This isn't just architectural millwork. This isn't just windows and doors, but we've got guys that are actually turning these posts and lengthening this thing to get it back to its original shape. A lot of handwork involved in here, and not something that you just nail together. It needs to be screwed, glued, and carefully built so that it lasts a long time. Look at this incredible piece here where we've got a door and a window on its side, and look at some of these construction details. I'll oftentimes have guys say, well, how do you do it when two things meet? How are they supposed to lap together, right? Here's a lap over joint from the past that helps us know how to build. And when we end up coming in and having to build these things for that courthouse, we learn how to build better. We learn about sloped sills. We learn about things that help them last longer because there's things that they practiced in the past that are a better way of building. They'll help things last longer. It's not just grabbing a board off the shelf. You need the right wood, you need the right details, and those details are where craftsmanship really matters. This is our joinery area. Maybe nothing else speaks to craftsmanship like joinery. And good joinery, it's things that last a long time, take longer to build. Figure you're putting two boards together. Are you running a screw in the back side with a pocket screw? Or do you have a mortise and tenon joinery or something that's holding that thing together? Which is best? Which is gonna last the longest? Which takes more skill, right? The pocket joinery is very simple. Anybody can do that. You set it up in a jig and you drill it together. But is that the best joint? Is that something that's going to last for a long time? I would argue on an exterior, no, it's not. And so there are better ways of building. So joinery ends up being one of those tedious skills, right, but really make a big difference. We do mortise and tenon joinery, okay? That's where you have a stile and rail coming together, The rail is actually tenoned, it goes into a mortise, it's locked together, sometimes it's even pegged. When they built joinery in the 1850s or 100, 150 years ago, they used those. They didn't have good glue, they pegged them together, and they're still lasting, they're still around. Why is that? Quality craftsmanship, right? So you're seeing where craftsmanship is all these incremental little changes that are taking place in the building make a big difference as far as how things last and what they look like. One of the challenges guys might have as far as crafting well is machinery. This is a very old hollow chisel mortar. So basically this is a hollow chisel, okay? It's a square on 4 sides, and there's a drill bit that runs in the middle. And that hollow chisel knife goes down and cuts while the blade sucks all the wood out of there, okay? We do that, and we have this machine that's probably 50 or 60 years old because there's so much cast iron into that thing. It's a machine that lasts a very long time. Look at our joiner here on this door, right? We've gone back with stave core joinery. A stave core is a door with these cores that go perpendicular to the face grain of the wood, but they create a very stable style that will not warp, will not twist, and will last a very long time. So all the decisions we made in here, this bevel right here, so that these boards that come down, there's no water, they can get into a pocket. There's all kinds of things that we've done to build what we hope will one day be a 100-year door, but in order to build this door to last longer, we have to input all this craft details so that we know we're building well. Now, that's not fast, it's not cheap, but it does last a long time and it is beautiful, right? So trying to find value in all these things, craftsmanship is something that really pays. Craftsmanship, right? How do you build a new house with an old soul? Craftsmanship. It's the second episode. We've done our introduction. What's the first thing we focus on? Craftsmanship. And so what we've done here in the company that we've set up, our historic millwork, is all about matching the past. And that really becomes a bar. That becomes a standard for quality, standard for craft, standard for how long things should be built. And when we are matching the past, we feel like we've got a much longer lasting product. Now, that doesn't mean it's cheap, it doesn't mean it's fast, right? It doesn't mean it can't be those things, but right now we are focusing on craft. How do you fight the man, right? How do you rage against the machine? You have to have fine craft in order to be able to do that. And you look, guys, all these things are little small incremental changes that we're doing that we want to build something that lasts. We want to build something that's beautiful. We want to build something that will be pleasing to the homeowner for a long time. We're doing that historic tavern under that guy's house. How do you build that, right? How do you match those things without craft? It's very difficult. But you realize that our industry has this raging torrent, this flood of materials, methods, and everything else that's all chasing the cheap and fast. And when you chase craft, you are raging against the machine. You are building better, higher quality things. Next time, we're going to look at foundations. We're going to look at them historically. We're going to look at them new. We're going to talk about different ways to do it. But how do you, if you're doing a slab foundation, how do you rage against the machine there? We'll talk about it next time on New House, Old Soul.